It's time for another module. This time it's Module 4, Organizing. We start with business organizing for the video overview. It's what you're watching now. When you're finished, please type completed in the assignment area. You have 4 chapters to focus on this time. First is Chapter 9, Designing Adaptive Organizations. You'll look at different formats for setting organizations up, whether it is hierarchical or more decentralized. You'll also look at different ways that you can structure job design. And this is something that will be decided upon by an organization as a whole, but primarily it comes down to, is it better to have one person highly trained in one specific area, or is it better to have a number of people trained maybe not so well in a specific area, but that way you have more people available to complete that job? Organizational processes is also discussed, and if that is an area of interest to you, then you'll definitely want to sign up for Intro to Operations Management. That's the science behind processes in business so that you can find the most effective way to get things done. Chapter 10 is all about working in teams. You have quite a bit of experience by now working in teams. Hopefully some of it's positive. Not everything a team does is a good thing, and your textbook does a great idea introducing the good, the bad, and the ugly of working in teams. It also discusses virtual teams and how they can be used effectively for an organization. For your enjoyment, I include a link to a video below this video, and it is about team think, or group think as it's more commonly known, and how sometimes having everyone like-minded on one team is not an effective practice. It still makes me chuckle as many times as I've seen it, but I hope you enjoy it. It's not very long, and it definitely might make you smile. Chapter 11, Managing Human Resource Systems, talks about everything related to employment law and finding qualified employees and training them and keeping them engaged. We don't spend a whole lot of time on this topic in this course because in the BME program you have an entire class dedicated to this topic. It's too important and there's too many legal liabilities possible. So we want to make sure that you have the most current information and the most current best practices in that industry. One of the most important items in this chapter is guidelines for conducting effective structured interviews. It's Exhibit 11.7 in my book. And in the chapter, it talks about things that you can do to lessen liability when you're making the interview process part of the hiring process. Primarily, you want to come up with the questions that you're going to ask applicants ahead of time. So that way the questions aren't colored by personal views related to individual applicants. You also want to make sure that you have a wide representation of members on the hiring committee. That way you can demonstrate that you've had more diversity in the thinking process for the hiring. When I was working at University of Oregon, I was on a hiring committee, and we had a lot of people to interview. So one woman, the woman on my right, she would jot down notes in the top right corner of each person's interview so that she could remember who was who. Well, we hired the best applicant. They had the education, the experience, they had everything that we wanted in the candidate. And it didn't happen to be a specific woman. So she sued the campus. She sued the university. And because of a note, black hair in the top corner, we lost the lawsuit because it was assumed, unrightfully so, she had written down mustache for a man, but the court assumed that because of her racial background, black hair was meant to differentiate in a negative way. It wasn't, but it was enough that she won and doesn't have to work anymore. So by effectively structuring interviews, making sure that you conduct interviews in a fair and impartial way, that you don't ask questions that can get you in trouble. When my daughter was working or was looking for a job in Ontario, Oregon, she actually had an interviewer ask her if she had met Jesus or had found Jesus yet. And my daughter was so shocked at the question of such a personal nature for a teacher position, she just didn't feel comfortable with going on with the interview. When you're training employees, understand that you may have to have different methodologies for different employees based on their favored learning styles. So if you create, like you did already, you did a great job developing training for others with your handout, just keep in mind that one size doesn't fit all. So you might need to consider different training styles, different training methods for different jobs, different people, different learning styles. Performance appraisals is also part of Chapter 11, and we'll talk about that more in just a little bit because that is your team project for this module. Chapter 12 is all about managing individuals and a diverse workforce. Boy, these days you've got diversity everywhere you turn, whether it is married with a family, single with a family, single without a family, married without a family, native Idahoan or non-native Idahoan, or race, religion, creed, whatever. It's just sexual orientation, dressing preferences. There's so much diversity that you are bound to hire people that have differences in their background. This makes for a more effective work environment, but it does make for more challenging management because you are likely going to have a wider variety of ages, wider variety of backgrounds. It's just hard to say how your reportees will be made up as far as the diversity structure. So your best bet is to assume that all members of your team have significant differences, and your goal as the leader of that team, whether it's a team of 2 or 200, your goal is to build consensus and support for those team differences and to find commonalities where you can. They're not always easy to find. It's much easier to find the differences in people, but there are a lot of similarities. So if you can find those and build on that, build on, wow, I'm a new employee too, or build on, I enjoy developing training programs, or I can't work Friday nights, whatever. If you can find things that help build support between people, then diversity becomes less of an issue and you're able to wahoo your team on. So those are the chapters that we're focusing on. Let's take a look at the rest of the tasks for this module. Next on the list, when goals aren't met. You want to believe that every time you set a goal, every time you start a project, you're going to be successful. I've got news for you. Eventually, it's going to happen. Somehow, somewhere along the line, you're going to see failure. So it's a matter of how do you get past the failure so that you and your team can get back on track and pick up any missing benchmarks, reevaluate, and be able to finish whatever you're working on successfully. So for this project, you're going to watch the video, read the articles, and you're going to be reading through Chapter 5, or at least rereading it briefly, just so that you can, especially the last part, using groups to improve decision making, so that you can see what happens when things don't work and how you can get past problems in your team environment. 2 to 3 page paper. Why is it important or why isn't it important to set goals? Take your opinion, one or the other. So your first paragraph introduces your opinion. The body of your paper discusses why you believe this, and you back it up with research data, and then you bring in your conclusion. You have a cover page, you have a references page. Everything is formatted in APA. That includes in-page citations. Now they're called in-text citations. Bizarre. And then submit it for grading. Next on our list, diversity. You're going to be talking about different levels of diversity. You're going to be seeing what exactly is diversity and why does it matter. So pick one, pick more than one, pull in data from your textbook, do additional research. I'm looking for college level involvement and college level interaction. This means your postings are spelled correctly, they have grammar check completed, they bring in salient points that add to the discussion, they include research to support your statements, and they move the discussion forward. You need your first post to be by Wednesday of this week, and that'll give you plenty of time to be able to add to the discussion and keep it going. You have 2 case studies, and the first one is about time off. It's a hot topic right now. Increasing number of businesses are incorporating this as an option. 2-page paper on the topic. Again, opening paragraph discusses your viewpoint. Are you for unlimited vacation or against it? Back your viewpoints up with research, cite your sources in the body, and then have your conclusion with your references page and your cover page. So here's some articles to get you started. You're welcome to cite from these along with your textbook, or find something else if you want, but I expect at least one of your citations to be from this. It's an interesting idea. Will people treat it nicely? Will they take their vacation? At the end of the year, the vacation disappears and it starts fresh the next year. So use it or lose it is the phrase. And is that a good thing? Or is it a way for companies to avoid paying for vacation? Will people abuse it and take too much time off? A lot of push and pull. So I look forward to reading your viewpoint. The next case study is on dress code. We've gotten a lot more lax in our dress code these days. So You're going to read these articles, and then you're going to answer this case study based on your personal viewpoint. So just as with the others, are you for or against having a dress code at work? So based on this scenario, not your own personal other ways, so it's based on this scenario, this business, this breakdown, what is your opinion regarding this? Here's some sources to pull from that are in addition to the others, things that you can go by. You have a couple of Microsoft apps. These are really quick. OneNote is probably 5 or 10 minutes. You're just going to install it if you haven't already. Reminder, all of the Microsoft Office apps are available free to students. You just have to install them. And so this is a tutorial on how to use the program. And here's the assignment pieces. They're very quick. So if you have questions, holler. Skype is another Microsoft app that you have access to. So you're going to watch the video. And as for the assignment, you're going to set up and host a Skype session with your teammates in the project for this module, and then take a screenshot. Each person will take a screenshot of the meeting and send it as an attachment or submit it as an attachment in the assignment area. That way I can see that you know how to use Skype. Woohoo! Okay, now we're to the team project. So you have the project itself. You're going to start off with your team charter. I don't include that now. It's just assumed that you will go ahead and complete that. And then after you're done, each person individually will do the performance evaluation for your for the review. So how did your team members do? For the team project performance evaluation, this is building on, well, it's a newer practice. It's no longer new, but employers have been evaluating the performance of employees for many, many years. So what's new is having employees evaluate the performance of the supervisor. So it's called a 360 evaluation. So for lack of anybody else, you're going to be evaluating me. The assignment has 2 parts, well, technically 3 parts. The first part is the development of your team charter, and I will look in your team area to make sure that you have those in place. Then you'll do part 1, and here's how part 1 is set up. Each team, so work as a team to come up with 1 set of 10 items. Just as I said, you'll want to come up with questions for the interview process ahead of time, you come up with performance criteria measures ahead of time. And you don't do it for one person, really. You would do it for all members in that employment category. So all first-level supervisors or second-level supervisors or whatever it breaks down to, those would be the questions that all of them are asked. And then you state what the criteria is that you're going to measure. You have some sort of measurability in place, whether it's poor to excellent, 1 to 6, however you want to break it down. And then feedback. So the first step is, as a team, start a page, create 10 criteria that you can use to evaluate my performance. Make them so it's not just for me, but that they could be used generically. Then, you're not going to fill it out in that first part. You're going to have your team lead drop a note in the assignment area, this area, and just say, okay, we have our criteria in place. and then I will take a look. Then only one person needs to do that. As a team, you'll again continue on to part 2. Once you have the performance appraisal criteria in place, and you don't add your input yet till that's done, you work together to review my performance as an instructor based on the criteria you set as a team. So if you have 4 people on your team, you'll have 1 review, not 4, 1. At least 3 areas of focus may not score more than mid-range approval level. So that way you have an opportunity to give me feedback on how I can improve. For each one of the areas, you're going to address the why. Why did you score me highly? What did I do right that makes you go, yes, keep doing that? For areas that did not score well, why didn't I score well? And one more thing, what can I do to improve in my area? So it's not enough to say, wow, you really suck at setting consistent deadlines, so we're going to rate you poor. I want you to be able to explain why I was given a poor or whatever, and what I can do to improve. Because that way, the next time, if I do that and I make that change, ideally I will score higher. And then over time, you're able to see progression in the improvement of an employee's performance. Okay, your paper is going to be a multi-page paper. Hard to say how long. It depends on your typing and how you lay it out. Each team will submit the finished evaluation. This is so that when you get to the end of the program and are working on your capstone project, you have this as something as an option to submit to show leadership and critical thinking and different skills that you've learned. So one person, let me know that the criteria is in place. Everyone submits the finished evaluation, and everyone needs to submit the same evaluation. If they don't all match, you all get zeros, because if you had someone giving feedback that didn't match, there would be an issue. Please know I do welcome your constructive criticism very much. Your grade can only improve with the quality input that you share. I also use what you share to improve the course overall. So a lot of the changes that have been made, you don't know what they are because you haven't seen it progress, but just know that the course has improved over time in part due to student feedback. And I thank you in advance for that. Once you have that done and everyone has submitted, then you'll jump in and each person will complete the team review. How did everyone do? Did they each participate? Was everyone holding their own and taking an active role in the team assignment? Let me know if you have questions. That's it for Module 4. It closes at the end of week 10. And then week 11, of course, is spring break. So we don't have any work during that week. Hang in there, people. Break's coming.